This week we start talking about cells, what is a cell, and how cells were actually discovered. Tomorrow we're going to spend a little time talking about the different scientists and what they each discovered and how. But let's start out today talking a little bit about cells. So these are the questions I gave you while you were reading. What are cells? How did the microscope contribute to gain knowledge of living things, or how did it help? And list some of the scientists. Mostly we'll talk about that tomorrow, and what is cell theory. But let's see if we can get through these first couple things. So first of all, what is a cell? From what you just read, what would you say? A cell is, what is a cell? A cell is what? Either in your own words or just exactly what the textbook said. What's a cell? Everybody's looking. What do you got? Okay, the basic unit of structure and function in all living things. Okay, so let's break that apart and see exactly what that means. It's the basic unit of structure and it's the basic unit of function. So what does structure mean? The basic unit of structure means it builds it. So a structure is a building, so it's a unit of structure. So it's like a brick or a building block. All living things are physically made of cells, right? You can see them. That's what makes up the living thing. Multicellular living things like you and me have hair cells and skin cells and blood cells, muscle cells and bone cells, and all those things that build us. Now, it's also the basic unit of function. Now, what does that mean? Yes. It enables things to do stuff. Yes. Yes. So functioning means working or doing things. And so this is interesting because in order to stay alive, what kind of things do you need to do? You need to breathe, eat, drink. Your blood needs to circulate. You need to use energy. You need to respond to the environment. You need to sleep. So doing things. And so the cells are actually the basic unit of how you're doing those things. So cells help you to use energy. And cells help you to breathe or use oxygen to get energy out of your food. Cells help you to move. Cells help you to sense the environment. You have nerve cells that help you sense what's going on around you. You have muscle cells to help you move. You have cells in your lungs that help you breathe in. Your blood cells carry oxygen and supplies to your body. So the cells not only physically build you, like the bricks of a building, they also help you function, like the electricity and heating system and all those other things that run a building. Make sense? So maybe a little bit of a confusing definition at first, but it's the basic unit of structure and function in all living things. Okay, so next, the second part said, how did the microscope help us discover cells and learn about life? That's pretty easy, right? Oh dear. How did the microscope help us discover things? Discover cells? Yes. Okay, so microscopes allow us to see tiny things not visible with the naked eye, which of course, almost all cells are microscopic. And so if we didn't have the microscope, we wouldn't know that they were there. The fact that Hooke and von Leeuwenhoek and they basically started looking at things under the microscope. And we'll talk about them quite a bit tomorrow. But they started looking at things, and then they saw that everything seemed to be made of cells. They kind of actually started this little fad of looking at things under the microscope. And everybody wanted to look at something else under the microscope. Before we had microscopes, people didn't understand germs and bacteria. They thought people got sick because, you're a bad person or because of evil spirits or things like that caused you to get sick. So cells, microscopes allowed us to see cells, which allows us to understand um, things like germs, which are actually bacteria. It allows us to understand things about how the body works because you can actually see blood cells. What kind of things did the scientists look at with their microscopes? Did you read about? What kind of things did they look at? Yes. Yes. So they looked at water, pond water actually, which is, what did they see in the pond water? Tiny moving things. And just like you're seeing tiny moving things or bigger moving things, and this was really the discovery of the first single-celled living things that they called animalcules, which I think is an awesome name. But so in water, they saw those living things. And then von Leeuwenhoek also looked at scrapings off of teeth. Okay, that sounds disgusting, but you know how you get that gooey plaque on your teeth? So he scraped that off and looked at it. And he saw bacteria, right? Bacteria grows in your mouth, can give you cavities and give you bad breath and all that. But so he saw the first bacteria by looking at that. And people just started looking at everything. Well, I wonder what a plant looks like. I wonder what this piece of meat looks like. I wonder what animal fur looks like. And they looked at everything they could look at. And what they found out is that everything seemed to be made of these little cells. Okay, and again, we'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow. And what was the last question? Oh, cell theory, and then the scientists. So we're going to get into the scientists tomorrow in a bigger way, but that kind of gives you a sense of this. And how long ago was this, the first microscopes? Yeah. Yeah, it's roughly in the 1600s, is that what it says? Yeah, 1590. So 1590, 1600s, thereabouts. So yeah, 400 years ago or so. And this is when, and it's funny because this is cell theory. Most of us were like, of course things are made of cells. Of course life only comes from other living things. Before this, they didn't understand disease and germs, but they also didn't understand, they thought that if they had this thing called spontaneous generation. Yeah. Who can describe spontaneous generation? This is what they believed before we saw cells. Yeah. This is the thing where they thought flies came out of rotting meat. Yes. Yeah, so living could come from non-living. Now, when you hear this on the surface of it, you think, well, no, that's really stupid. But have you ever, left some bananas out on the countertop, and then the next thing you know, there's all those fruit flies all over them, right? Like, where did those come from? They just like seem like they magically occur. Or if you leave some food in your locker, if you leave it out, all of a sudden it's growing mold all over it. Where did that come from? It seems like, if just looking with your eyes, not using a microscope, it seems like it just kind of magically comes about. And so the absolutely disgusting example that they use is rotting meat. They thought if rotting meat just sits out, it would grow maggots, which are the little larvae of flies, right? Of course, we know where do they really come from. What's that? From other flies. And how do the maggots get in the meat? Yeah, the flies land on it and lay the eggs, and the eggs are pretty much microscopic, and so then a little while later you get this disgusting, and that rotting smell, that's bacteria growing. And so, but they couldn't see that. So what they could see with their eyes is that if you leave it out, flies appear on it. If you leave, there's another funny one where if you leave rice and old rags in a pile, it will grow mice, right? Maybe not. If you leave the Cheerio box in the pantry open, mice will magically, spontaneously appear in your, or maybe not. But it seems like it. All right, so that's it for today. We will talk about these scientists in a little bit more detail tomorrow.